Good morning. So I just want to say thank all of you for coming in early this morning, and for those of you who thought we were giving the car away this morning, I apologize, it's not for another 12 hours. But I just want to welcome you to the 2016 Annual Industry Report. This is the third edition of the Annual Industry Report, and we've done this in conjunction with Deloitte for the last 3 years. And this year, we're pleased to report that we've really gotten some traction with this report. Over 900 respondents, which was double versus the other reports that we've had in the past. The other exciting thing is that it actually has been covered in the Wall Street Journal this morning. So we've obviously gotten some traction with this report, and we're really pleased to present it to you today. There were several key technologies that have been consistent throughout the report since 2014, and my notes just finally came up. I was just ad-libbing there, so thank you for putting up with me. But before I go any further, what I'd like to do is introduce the panel today. Scott Sofer, who is with the Deloitte Consulting, has been with us all three reports, and Scott is going to help me moderate today with our panel. The panel I'd like to introduce is Greg Goodner, who's a board member with Hytrol Conveyor Company, Todd Farwell, Global Development Champion, Resource Development and Culture Team, Analytics and Innovation, is with Caterpillar. Jay Kim, who's the Chief Strategy Officer with APX Labs. Tim Brown, Managing Director, Supply Chain and Logistics Institute, Georgia Tech. And Randy Bradley, Assistant Professor of Information Systems and Supply Chain Management, Haslam College of Business, the University of Tennessee. And I want to thank you all for being here today. They're going to give you their insight. These folks have all living various parts of these technologies. So, as I mentioned, we've done this in collaboration with Deloitte. This report is what we've tagged it as the always-on supply chain. And the always-on supply chain has the potential to deliver massive economic and environmental rewards, resulting in exponential change for industry and our society as a whole. As I mentioned, we had over 900 manufacturing and supply chain professionals that were surveyed. A majority of them were C-suite and upper management. Supply chain challenges were validated with three key themes remaining top of mind. The 8 technologies that have been identified in all three reports consistently with varying degrees of adoption and acceleration in their pace of growth have been predictive analytics, robotics and automation, sensors and automatic identification, wearables and mobile technology, driverless vehicles and drones, inventory and network optimization tools, cloud computing and storage, and 3D printing. Today's panel is just going to focus on the fastest growing and the innovations with the fastest adoption rates. We'll touch on all of those technologies at some point, I'm sure, but again, we're going to talk about the fastest growing and the ones with the fastest adoption rate. Those are fastest growing robotics and automation, driverless vehicles and drones. And in fact, this morning, the Wall Street Journal kind of zeroed in on the robotics and automation and driverless vehicles and drones. Fastest adoption rates are cloud computing, storage, sensors, and automatic identification. 52% of the companies that were surveyed indicated that they're going to invest over $1 million in innovation in the near future. 3% of those companies indicated they were going to invest over $100 million. Scott, this is the third year of our collaboration. Can you give us a perspective on the report?
Sure, thank you, George, and good morning, everybody. So what's the survey and the report kind of reveal? A full 83%, it's actually up from 75% a year ago, of the survey respondents believe that at least one of these 8 technologies could be a source of competitive advantage over the next 5 to 10 years. And more manufacturing and supply chain firms are upping their financial commitments to innovation. As George mentioned, 52% are spending over $1 million, 3% are spending over $100 million around these 8 technologies. But as you can see on the slide, there's still significant barriers that exist. The number one issue is lack of a business case, 43%. Also, 38% still see the lack of talent in their organizations to use this technology correctly. And lastly, 35% see a cultural aversion to risk as slowing companies down. We'll talk a lot about the always-on supply chain. Technology and innovation are accelerating change and creating the environment for this always-on supply chain. So when we say always-on supply chain, we're talking, today, digitally engaged consumers are always on. And it requires an equally always-on supply chain to respond to their needs. And this transformation to a digital supply chain really alters the fundamental characteristics of a traditional supply chain model, and has completely changed the game. Continuous and automated readings from material handling equipment will be translated into a digital state using predictive analytics powered by tools probably residing up in the cloud, and that will enable you to recommend different actions to be taken. It's clear that technology is the driver of this change that's going on, but it's not a single technology. I think it's a combination of the 8 technologies that we'll highlight today that are in the report. The top technologies in the survey are providing competitive advantage. The top 4, robotics and automation, 51% see this as a top technology, up from 39% a year ago. Inventory network optimization, as you can see, 48% up from 45%. Sensors and automatic identification, 47% up from 42%. And predictive analytics, 44% up from 38% a year ago. If you look at the fastest growing technologies, robotics and automation, driverless vehicles and drones, both lead in the perceived ability to create supply chain disruption for a competitive advantage. And both of those have a 12% growth spike from a year ago. And while adoption of sensors and automatic ID technologies is currently at 44%, it's expected to grow to 87% over the next 5 to 10 years. If you look at the adoption rates, cloud computing and storage and sensors and automatic identification are technologies leading in terms of adoption rate at 45 and 44% respectively. And adoption of sensors and automatic identification expected to grow to 87% again over the next 6 to 10 years. Six of these 8 technologies covered in the report, the survey respondents predicted will have an adoption rate of over 74% over the next 6 to 10 years. And only driverless vehicles and drones and 3D printing have a lower predicted adoption rate, but even their adoption rates are expected to be around 50% in that same time frame. But the biggest obstacle, we talked about this last year, it still kind of shows up, is around the supply chain talent gap. It's the biggest obstacle facing our profession. 58% of the respondents indicated that it's a significant challenge in hiring and retaining a skilled supply chain workforce. 56% of the survey respondents, up from 53% a year ago, said that training the workforce to use this technology is their top priority. And 38% of the respondents believe that there's a lack of adequate talent to utilize these technologies effectively. And by 2018, there'll be 1.4 million new supply chain jobs here in the US. So let's kind of go to the panel and start with some questions. Let's focus on robotics and automation. And Greg, we'll open up the discussion with you. 61% of the respondents, as you can see on the chart, believe that robotics and automation has the potential to either create competitive advantage or be a disruptive force in the industry. While adoption is currently 49%, that is expected to rise to 76% over the next 6 to 10 years. Greg, what's driving this trend?
Thank you, Scott, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I see three things that are impacting this transformation that's taken place. Number one, what I see is that customers are demanding quicker, faster response from their suppliers. If you're in the manufacturing world today, the pressure is on to deliver in shorter cycle times and shorter lead times than you ever have had to perform under in the past. If you're in the distribution world, getting it business to business or business to customer, there's an expectation from the end user, the person using the garments or the products, that they want those things delivered almost overnight. And so what's happening is this demand is forcing part of this transformation, because you've got to find ways to automate to speed up. You got to look at your processes, and you got to eliminate the non-value added work. You got to streamline the effectiveness and accelerate the velocity of your products through the chain in your manufacturing or distribution centers. The second thing I see driving this is cost. Cost in a couple different ways. One is labor costs. Labor costs are rising. As we all know, we're getting ready to deal with a minimum wage of $15 per hour. That's going to have an impact in a lot of distribution centers across the country, and so they're going to have to look at ways to automate. But it's just not the labor cost that's driving that. You got the benefit cost too. You got the medical plans. You got the pension plans. You got the worker comp situation. You've got the training, and you've got the retention of employees that all go into the cost factor. And today, your customer doesn't want to pay for those type of costs. So what you have to look at is, how do we eliminate some of the costs we have, both in the employment side, but in the operational side? What kind of non-value added work can we take out so that we don't place that burden upon the customer? He does not want to pay for the additional cost that may be associated to getting the product to him. The third area I see is in the labor side, and it's finding the availability of people to supply your needs, the skill sets that are needed, along with just finding people in your marketplaces. Some marketplaces are very difficult to find the labor to come in and help out. So these three factors seem to be driving this transformation to robotics and automation as I see it, Scott.
Thanks, Greg. Todd, how can companies meet the challenges of their customers' ever-rising expectations for faster response times?
It really is going to take all of the 8 technologies we're talking about are going to have to work together in concert to really meet these ever-changing expectations of our customers. They are demanding lightning fast response, and like it or not, the supply chain has actually become part of the customer experience, right? So I don't know about you guys, but as a supply chain guy, when my order gets picked and it sends me an alert, I'm happy. You know, and I always want to know what the behind the scenes was on it. But everything is part of that customer experience. They are, thanks to Zappos and Amazon and companies like that, the customers want this mass customization type of environment or experience to meet all of their individual needs, and these needs vary greatly. So we're going to really have to automate and use robotics, because if you try to do this in a warehouse type setting with manual labor, it's going to take a legion of people. And as Greg just mentioned, with the cost of people going up exponentially here, you're really going to have to think about what robots can do and how we can automate our processes. We're experimenting with these things called cobots. And what we look at is we look at jobs as, if they're dirty, if they're dangerous, or if they're demoralizing, we really want to give those jobs over to some sort of automation process. Now that's great, we free those other people up to do more value-added type activities, but we also get massive efficiency gains within our warehouses and our manufacturing operations. So that, those are some things that are actually driving this. And then you've got these customer experiences. The same customer may want the same item 3 different ways in 3 successive orders. How are we going to keep up with that? There's only one way, and that really is to truly automate our processes as much as we can.
Thanks, Ted. Hey, Randy, what robotics and automation technologies are being used?
That's an interesting question, because what we're seeing is what was old is now new. Let's say if you take, for example, the automated guided vehicles or the autonomous forklifts that we've seen in use for nearly a decade now. So with respect to that, we're still seeing those in use, and they're still used to load, unload trucks. We see them for warehouse redesign or to help structure the warehouse a little better. But the new part of that is it used to be to where the capabilities and the functionalities and the intelligence was embedded into the machinery. What we're seeing now is that intelligence and logic is actually embedded into the chips, such that we can now more easily retrofit a piece of equipment to do something that it may not necessarily have been intended to do in the past. So that's the part that was old and is now new. Now, I think one of the more emerging technologies that we're seeing, and it's even here on the show floor, is what we call the fully autonomous mobile picking systems. I think Swift is one that's been introduced by Robotics, which is a fabulous solution where it fully integrates into your e-commerce system. And so for the most part, you have totally removed the human need for intervention with respect to this process. So if you think about that, if we're talking about efficiencies, if we're talking about being able to be more agile with respect to our warehouse management productivities and actions, now it gives us the capabilities to do that. And then the third part is what we refer to as more collaborative solutions or collaborative robotics. For instance, there is a robot in the market by the name of Baxter. Most people would think Baxter is your next door neighbor, but Baxter is the robot that works alongside a human, and those triple D's that Todd mentioned, those are the things that Baxter would do. And so whether you want Baxter to do a full job or whether you want Baxter to augment or enhance what an individual would do, those are the capabilities you now have, and they're relatively low cost. You would think to have something or someone like Baxter would cost a fortune, but you can get it for as little as $25,000. Imagine a $25,000 investment, and yet you can radically and immediately improve your efficiencies.
Thanks, Rick. Let me give you a follow-up question. How are robotics, automation technologies enhancing the workplace?
All right. There are at least 3 ways in which we see it enhancing the workplace. And the first one is better facility and layout. And what do we mean by that? What it means is that now executives are being given the opportunity to give more forethought to what does a facility and the design and the warehouse really need to look like to be able to accommodate these vehicles. We remember the days where we had to have the tracks on the floors to make sure that an autonomous vehicle could to get to where it needs to be, and now that's not the case. Most of these vehicles or these autonomous technologies don't require tracks of any kinds. They've used sensors. And then the important thing is when we talk about BYOD or bring your own device, many of these mechanisms can now connect to the devices of your personnel that are within the vicinity and use that to navigate and determine what's the more optimal route to take. Another area where we're seeing improvements is it creates the potential to use your human capital in more value-added activities. And I believe Todd alluded to that as well. But the question is this: have you identified what those value-added activities would be? Because it's easy for us to say, and for an organization to say, we're going to free them up. But in most cases, when you ask them what are they going to do, they haven't given any thought to that. And so I think these create a great opportunity for us to really think a bit more strategically and less tactically in terms of what does it really mean to add more value that's going to resonate with the consumer. And then lastly, it's about safety and efficiency. But if you think about the old mantra of supply chain, which has been for some time now, is we want to be more efficient. But if we're talking about digital supply chains, these always on-demand supply chains, we've got to transition from a focus on efficiency to a focus on agility. And I believe that's what these technologies enable us to do.
Thanks, Randy.
You know, Scott, to play on what Randy and Todd have talked about is that if you look at where the biggest growth in the robotic side from application standpoint occurred is in 2015. You see coding and dispensing as up 49% over the previous year. You see material handling up 24%, and spot welding is up 22%. So back to what Todd is saying, what you're seeing is looking at these operations that may be mundane, repetitive, or in a dirty environment, or maybe safety plays into that whole thing. So you start rethinking How can we do this by taking the human element out of it, automate the process, and then, to Todd's point, take the value-added work and bring that back to the human factor?
I'll jump in here a little bit too, because it triggered a thought in my mind. Of course, there's also the fear of, taking jobs away from people, and we'll get into that a little bit later when we're talking about the workforce. But one of the things that actually happens is we're actually creating jobs, and we're actually creating jobs that pay at a higher level. So it creates a higher standard of living for everybody, and gets away from the triple Ds. So.
Hey, Greg, what should leaders be doing today regarding robotics and automation?
What's that?
It was a late night last night. What should leaders
We
be?
had a great discussion last night, by the way.
What should leaders be doing regarding robotics and automation?
What I see going on with robotics and automation, and you need to take an introspect look into your operations. If you're in a manufacturing environment, you need to step back and take a look at those operations that we talked about that are mundane, maybe not safe, or certainly a dirty environment, and say, can I automate these operations to take the human element out of it? It may be also in areas where you're finding that you have certain specifications, certain standards, certain critical dimensions that are necessary to be repeatable time after time after time. With robotics and automation, you're able to do that, so your quality continues to go up. The robot doesn't get tired, the automation doesn't wear out, and so you're constantly seeing the same quality standards from the first piece you made all the way through the last piece you made. And I think also in the distribution operations, one of the things I've kind of said, I would hate to be in the palletizing business today, because robots are taking the place of palletizers. And it's not going to be long before robots can see. They'll have vision on the robots to be able to pick up color, to be able to pick up size of boxes that maybe are differentiating coming down to where you want to palletize the product. So I see taking an introspect look, seeing where you can automate and put this type of equipment into place so that you can help eliminate some of the cost that's associated, streamline your operations, again, back to what the customer is willing to pay for and what the customer is demanding from shorter lead times and shorter internal cycle times.
Thanks, Greg.
And I would just add to that, I think you need to, in terms of what leaders should do, I think it needs to be a part, and this is piggybacking on what Randy said. Leaders, you need to make it a part of your strategic process going forward. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? And how are we going to stay competitive? And this is all about staying competitive. So, while current adoption rates of wearable and mobile technologies in the supply chain is 26%, their adoption is expected to surge to 75% over the next 6 to 10 years. Jay, what are the current and emerging applications of wearables for supply chains that you've experienced?
Thanks, George. Wearable technology's fundamental value proposition is wrapped around the fact that it keeps your hands free. For you to be able to do whatever it is that you're doing within every aspect of the supply chain. So, whether or not it's a device that you wear on your wrist or whether or not it's a device that you wear on your head, ultimately, we're coming back to actually the human factor aspects of it. Wearable technology fundamentally, unlike some of the infrastructure investments in robotics and automation and things like that, this is an investment that the supply chain companies are making into their human workforce. The technology that actually touches upon the people that are doing a variety of different tasks. So the current applications of wearables are, on the wrist-worn side, the most common example is the wrist-worn barcode scanner. So by freeing up the hand that you're wearing, and that sometimes gets overlooked as one of the earlier movements of wearable technology that's found across every aspect of supply chain, but that's where it got started, freeing up your hands to be able to do that. Now, as devices have gotten more mature and mobile technology has become more prevalent towards being able to deliver more intelligence on that edge device, you're starting to see things like smartwatches acting as an auxiliary display that's coupled to the mobile phones that in turn may be connected to your ERP or WMS or WES type of infrastructure systems. But a lot of the latest innovation is actually happening on the head-worn space with smart glasses, which contains a heads-up display, basically the insides of a smartphone and all of the sensors that you would ordinarily find in a smartphone. And the value there is that not only are your hands free, you now can work with little to no interruption by being able to actually visualize the information that you need to do your work so that you're able to go and work kind of continuously. So a lot of that, a lot of that started with the basic applications again. If we're in the warehousing environment, there's a lot of innovation and a lot of successful pilot projects that have completed around picking and packing. You're starting to see quite a bit in the asset management and inventory management and receiving. Because again, these are people that are commonly working with their hands that still need the information, and people are still living in a world where you're either being delivered the information on pen and paper, or you go to a workstation and you come back with a variety of kinds of paper instructions and other kinds of things that you have to fumble around. So wearables remove a lot of that.
Right.
You may want to talk about some of the advancements in terms of smart glasses that with the sensors, like in rack aisles, you could basically know which aisles might be, congested, and then can almost direct you rather than just saying, hey, go do this task.
Yeah, so a lot of the sensors that you're seeing in these kinds of wearables are driving a lot of that delivery, the sensing at the personal level. If you think about it, glasses worn on the user's head actually provides a ton of specific human context that can be used to determine your user location. And you couple that with things like predictive analytics and other kinds of automatic ID and sensor systems, and now you can go and deliver actionable information to the user that's actually doing the work right where the work is being done. So location is one example. Another example is this whole concept of picking by vision. So being able to use the onboard camera to go and scan barcodes and sense different kinds of products.
The interesting thing to me is in the first annual report, several of these technologies, especially wearables, was just very, very cutting edge. And actually on the show floor, there might have been one booth that had, one or two booths that had it. And now you walk out there today and there are many companies that have started adopting these technologies.
George, if I can, let me add something
Sure.
to that conversation, which is something that oftentimes we overlook, which is we can get caught up in the space and the industry that we're in. But if we begin to look beyond what's happening in the material handling space and say, is there something with respect to not only wearables, but what we're now calling embedded chips and technologies? Right. For instance, it's not just what you have on you, but it's what you have in you. Right. So we're even seeing now, even in healthcare, you may be aware that Google was granted a patent to create a contact lens, and it's done under the premise of being able to analyze the information in a tier, particularly for patients who have diabetes, to help them monitor their blood glucose level. But if you look at the extension of that patent, what the goal is to be able to take it and make it into a smart glass, just like eyeglasses like they did with their Google eyewear, such that whenever you look at an object, anything about that object is revealed before you without distorting your vision. So what we have to begin to prepare for is not just where we as an organization provide the wearables, but what happens when your personnel come and they have these wearables or sort of these embeddables within them. Are you able to tap into that and leverage it as well?
Right. Well, and think of the health, for example, this has occurred to me over the years. You think somebody gets in an accident or something. Right. All that critical, all their data is there, so there isn't any guessing about, does this person have diabetes, whatever the deal is. Think of the impact that can have in terms of saving lives. Right. I mean, it's really incredible. So Jay, what should leaders be doing today regarding these technologies?
Wearable technology still is emerging, and emerging tech has a cost component that's, obviously emerging technology implies that you're dealing with non-commodity parts. even though over the last year and a half, there have been tremendous advancements in both in terms of technology and real life use cases around wearables in different elements of the supply chain management process, there is still a cost component that you invest up front to be able to get in on it. And a lot of this can't just be an innovation project that kind of starts and fizzles out. So I think you heard this earlier on the robotics and automation side, but a lot of this is building out that technology roadmap and a lot of that business strategy roadmap over the course of several years, because again, technology turnover in these kinds of environments can take years to go and complete. And start small by executing, some of the identifying some of the high value use cases that are relevant in your businesses, and carrying that out against a broader execution.
Right. Little bites of the apple in your strategic plan.
George, you talk about wearables. Right behind me over here is a great wearable that I'd like to take home with me, that's for sure.
Okay, let's talk about kind of the rise of Internet of Things, advancements in sensor technologies, and the new analytical capabilities has created opportunity for companies to better manage global supply chains through actionable intelligence. Adoption of sensors and automatic identification technologies currently 44% and is expected to grow to 87% in the next 6 to 10 years. Todd, how do you see these technologies being used?
Well, we can kind of draw an analogy in our own lives. How many people have some sort of fitness band or fitness tracker on them right now? Go ahead, hold up your hands, be proud of it. All right, that's great. So we have these things, and we have all this information given to us from these things. They're fantastic. You can see what your exercise level is. You can see how stressful it was. You can see, what kind of calories you need to take in today, and all of that is something that I promptly ignore, right? I don't take action on this thing a lot of times. It's a nice decoration in some cases. But it does make my workouts more efficient. It allows me to not have to, overtrain and cause me to do a lot of excess activity I don't really have to. So now we need to apply this to our supply chains, right? We need to diagnose the fitness and the health of our supply chains. And that's what sensors and all this technology is going to do. It's starting to become very cost effective to do so. And as the costs go down, you're going to see that almost ubiquitous kind of application in our supply chains across the board. And they're going to be able to do stuff for us, right? They're going to be able to, you're going to have an event and you're going to be able to know the severity of that event, the risk it poses to your operation, and then you're going to be able to mitigate it. When I was with a large trucking company about 10 years ago, we outfitted all 48,000 of our trailers with GPS devices. Now what that did to us, we turned it on, it lit up our entire network. We were able to automate a ton of things like detention. It automatically started accruing, things like that. So we were able to make our assets just very, very, very efficient. And I think that we've done a great job as leaders getting excess, stuff out of our supply chains. We've become very efficient, we've become very lean, we're good at it. However, I don't think we have all the information. And there's probably still tremendous slack in all of our supply chains right now. And once we light up that supply chain, we're going to discover tombstones and black holes we just didn't know existed. And it's going to be fantastic. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to disrupt a lot of what we do as individuals, as professionals. Is think about it. If you knew everything about your supply chain and got all the inefficient things and the non-value added stuff out of it, what does that do to your transportation provider? What does that do to you as a transportation provider? So we're going to have to look at this. The sizes of our warehouses are likely going to shrink. We're not going to have them in the same spot. We may not have them in the same spot for 2 years in a row. We may have to have flexible spaces. So just think of all the things that are going to come of that, and we're going to have to help people through this transition as we do this. You know, we again focus them towards more value-added work. Now, the benefits of knowing everything that's going on in your supply chain, you know, the big time, I know Greg mentioned cost quite a bit. Our customers are demanding better and better and better at lower and lower cost. And I think one of the ways we can do this is by fully automating and adding, you know, the sensor technology to our supply chain activities. It's going to drive an era of what I would like to say is abundance. We're going to have great capacity. We're not going to miss anything. We're not going to shut our clients down, you know, so our customers are going to be very happy. And I think as we move forward, you're just going to see that era of abundance and this whole revolution around, you know, managing our customer through these sensors.
Thanks, Todd. Let's kind of shift gears, talk about predictive analytics. To me, this was one of the most fascinating kind of results of the survey. Today, 22% of the survey respondents say that they're leveraging predictive analytics, but they said in 6 to 10 years it'll be well above 80%. So maybe, Tim, if you could talk about how predictive analytics is a critical enabler of the always-on supply chain.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Scott. I think we're seeing this ramp up of expected growth to 80% in analytics in our popularity of our degree programs. A couple of years ago, we launched a MS in Analytics program for 40 students, and then we ramped it up to about 60 students this year. And in the past couple of months, we've had applications for 750 students for this new MS Analytics programs, and they're all well-qualified students. So yes, I think the world is preparing for a more analytical future. And we think of always-on digital supply chains, they're far more complex than traditional supply chains, multi-channel, always-on environment. And while some companies will continue to thrive in being a single channel operation with pallet in, pallet out, you know, that's great, and it's probably a wonderful place to be. But most of us are going to have to deal with multi-channel, always on, and we can't avoid complexity. You know, we have to thrive and embrace complexity, and predictive analytics, coupled with the other technologies we're talking about, will be a key to success. You know, predictive analytics on its own doesn't give us anything. It provides us with the knowledge, but it can be enabled, and it is enabled itself through the other technologies. And if you look at the different components of the supply chain and how predictive analytics can come to play, we like to talk about the physical internet concept, which some of you may have been hearing about, which is taking hold in Europe, and we're hoping will take hold now in the Americas. And it's all about hyper-connected, optimized, always-on supply chains. And if you look at the different components and taking those concepts enabled by predictive analytics in warehousing, today the traditional model is to design a future distribution center. We design it for optimal operation 5 to 7 years out. But no one knows what their business models are going to be 5 to 7 years out. No one has a clue what their e-commerce percentage is going to be or anything like that. So we take past 12 months history of throughput and inventory and SKU mix and that type of thing. We make some tweaks and we magically project it out to the future. And we design a distribution center with a fixed number of shipping docks and receiving docks, and really lock in a very hard-coded design with sortation systems and mezzanines and all of that. And then 2 years into it, or sometimes there's some companies in this room I know that by the time they opened the facility, their business model had totally changed, and they've got a 2 million square foot facility that's totally sub-optimized from the day it operates. So with predictive analytics, if we can build that concept into open warehousing, we know what our volumes are going to be day to day, week to week, month to month, maybe even within the day, business is shifting. We should embrace more flexible designs in our warehouses. Maybe they're suboptimal at a channel level, but from a broader flexibility standpoint, it provides greater efficiencies from that perspective. And then the same thing on the transportation side. Predictive analytics leads us to a more crowdsourced transportation model, which benefits both shippers and carriers. On the shipper side, instead of being locked into volume commitments by carriers for a month or a quarter or a year or even a week guaranteeing X amount of shipments per day, open model guided by predictive analytics, you can optimize on your region with your neighbors and their warehouses and build more efficient loads and get better rates. And it can also benefit the carriers likewise, where they can better utilize their assets. And then finally, predictive analytics in network design and inventory optimization. You know, instead of companies being afraid to have inventory in more than one or two locations when their ERP system can handle it, and they have the infrastructure, multiple distribution centers. With predictive analytics, there's a greater comfort level saying, okay, I'm more comfortable truly optimizing how much inventory I place around the country, and I'm not going to just hold my breath and hope that I can manage it from one DC.
I've got something to add on to that. Whether it's predictive analytics or sensors, take action. There have to be actions driven from your investment in these technologies. That's where I fail with my fitness tracker, right? You know, so I don't always take action on what it's telling me. But as supply chain professionals, when we make this investment, please, please, please set up the back office operations so that you can take action and it's meaningful and it has an impact on your business.
Yeah, I just throw in, I like to think of it as always on means always changing, and the predictive analytics give you the awareness to be that change is happening.
Hey, Randy, what should leaders today be doing around these emerging technologies?
There are at least three things. One we recommend is think convergence. Don't think about a one-off solution with respect to any of these technologies, but think about how can we triangulate some of these technologies to the point to where we're actually able to create competitive advantage, but not just create it, but also have the ability to sustain it. The second thing that I would say is you have to be willing, and you have to decide, are we willing to change the way we do business? And the reason is because if in fact you're going to embrace a digital supply chain that's always on, then it's going to require a supporting business model and a supporting operating model. And I'll go ahead and pull out my crystal ball and I'll tell you what your business model is going to be in the next 3 to 5 years. Different. If you ever wanted to know it, that's what it's going to be. So you need to ask yourself, are we willing to take this plunge to the degree that our competitors are? And then the third thing that I'll tell you to do is ask yourself another question. If your current and future competitors embrace any of these technologies, does it and will it threaten the viability of your current products and services? If the answer to that is yes, then what you've got to do is you've got to start innovating, but not just innovating for the sake of innovating. It has to be purposeful, and it needs to be intentional, and it needs to be directional. But if the answer to those questions with respect to you is no, then for now, you can sit back for the next 5 minutes and you can do nothing. But after that, you've got to start innovating anyway. Because the reality is there is a digital disruption that is heading your way, and it's likely not coming from your closest competitor.
Right.
Great.
We had a speaker on Monday morning, Mr. Diamandis, and he talks about exponential change, and which really tied into this. And he said, don't think in terms of 10%. Think of 10 times, because that's how fast things are changing. And if you're thinking at 10%, you're going to be behind the whole, you're never going to get in front of it. So. Okay, one of the major issues exposed in this year's and last year's report is the barrier to adoption of all these great technologies caused by the workforce crisis. The U.S. Roadmap for Material Handling and Logistics predicted that between now and 2018, there'll be 1.4 million jobs added in the logistics and supply chain field. Yet we don't have the resources to fill them. Doesn't that move to digital, always on, we're talking about, further complicate the talent shortage, Randy?
I think the answer to that is yes and no. And it may sound like a bit of hedging, but in reality, it's not hedging. It's just realizing there's a true dichotomy with respect to talent shortage in the industry. If in fact what you're referring to is a more mature, experienced, older generation, and now you're trying to bring on these emerging technologies, I think absolutely that's going to create a talent shortage and a challenge, because many of them are not comfortable using these technologies, let alone being around them. I mean, let's face it. Go ask your grandparents, how comfortable would you be having Baxter hang out next to you? And I guarantee you, many of them will look at you as if you were a ghost yourself. And so that's something that we have to be prepared to address. The other part, and let me give you an example in the transportation space. I have a brother-in-law who's in his mid-70s. He just retired about 3 years ago from being an over-the-road driver. And he didn't retire because his employers figured he needed to be off the road. He retired because he figured he needed to be off the road. And so it's those types of things that we have to address. So when you look at whether it's the technology in the cab or the cabin, or whether it's the technology in the trailer, the reality is you've got to have a workforce that is comfortable dealing with that technology. And if not, that's going to create a problem. The other part to this question, which is the no answer to the talent shortage, which is we're producing students steadily that have the skill sets and the capabilities to embrace the emerging technologies we're talking about. The question is are you as an organization truly embracing them? For instance, if you hire a student who has been at Amazon and they come into your facility, will they look and feel as if they stepped into the Stone Ages? Will it look like the Flintstone vehicle with a nitrous oxide infusion pump? So you have to think along those lines, because that's really what we're experiencing in terms of these dichotomies. We have to embrace the technologies and then make sure we then target specifically the talent that actually has the capabilities to help us advance those technologies.
Well, and there's another challenge in this whole thing too. When you bring up, for example, the trucking thing, we all know there's like 100% turnover in that industry, right. And people are not wanting to get into those jobs. And we're in what I would call a transition in that area, because quite frankly, that's moving to driverless, autonomous.
Right.
And so those jobs are actually going to go away. So why would you
right.
do that? But so it's an interesting dynamic that we've got there. So. Greg, what steps should the industry take to attract the right people with the right skill sets to drive innovation?
You know, I think, George, business leaders need to take, again, an introspect look into their companies. They need to create a culture that is driven by innovation and creativity. In today's employment world, people coming out of the universities are looking for fun places to work that are creative and innovative and have that type of culture. So if you're not fostering that type of culture, then you need to make some transformation and changes so that you can attract the best and the brightest into your business. I look at one of the transformations that's taken place, and you all have seen it on TV many times, as in General Electric. And you see these ads about this person saying he's going to go work for GE and he's going to program trains and going to do it. And they ask, "You're going to build trains?" What GE is doing in a transformation in Silicon Valley, they've set up an operation in Silicon Valley. In 2 years, they have hired 750 software engineers. And their goal is by 2020 to be one of the top 10 software companies in the United States. Now, who in the world would think of GE being a software company? That's the kind of transformation you're seeing, because it's a cultural shift. I think we've got to look at our business and do that. The second thing we have to do is we have to look at how can we re-educate and retrain our workforce. We've got a lot of good employees, but with the technologies that are coming in today, the skill sets may not be there. So what we need to do is start to retrain our employees. One of the things we've done in the community I'm in is we developed a workforce training consortium. In that consortium, it's driven by industry. Industry develops the curriculum. Industry picks the leaders that are going to do the teaching. We got soft skills. We've got hard skills. Employees are sending people back to learn electronics, basic electricity, programming of CNC equipment. These are the things we have to do to retrain the good employees that we have. So embrace the community activity, look at your universities, your technical schools and what have you, and see if you can embrace. The second thing I see is the workforce of the future. Where is that going to come from? That's coming from the kids that are in school today. What I'm seeing is there is going to be a tremendous demand for people with technical backgrounds. I don't believe we're pushing the technical skill sets enough in our students today. And I'm not talking at the university level, I'm talking at the elementary level and the middle school level. So I think it takes everybody, the industry leaders and everybody within communities, to start looking at STEM programs so that we look at science and technology and mathematics as the driver. And if you want to look at jobs forever, if you've got a technical background, you're going to be in pretty good shape for a long time. What you're seeing even today is companies that in the sales arena want people with a technical background, so they bring the total skill set to not only be able to sell, but to explain exactly what this equipment does, how it operates, and how it functions. So I think that's some of the things that need to happen, George.
Well, and there's also that awareness thing, and at MHI, one of the things, we've done a great job over the years of, we've got the Education Foundation that has given out almost $3 million in scholarships to juniors and seniors in industrial engineering. And we've realized over the last several years that there's a huge gap in the technical area. And these 1.4 million jobs that we're talking about, a lot of those are going to be technical type jobs, and they're not the dirty, dangerous, demoralizing jobs. We've got a image out there also. It's an image problem that they're thought of as dirty, dangerous, demoralizing jobs. So we just have announced we've got hired a new program director, Angela Jenkins, who's going to be in charge of our career technical education. And the whole objective on that is to get down into the, literally down to the elementary school level and create the awareness and show them that these jobs, they're fun and exciting. And they're also not your $15 an hour jobs. The report indicates that the median income on the jobs is like $78,000 a year. So that's pretty good. So. Okay, what are the most critical competencies for future supply chains in the workforce? Tim, could you give us a comment on that, please?
Sure. Some thoughts coming from surveys and discussions we've had with industry at the different levels. That in an executive training, focus on innovation and blue sky thinking is the common theme that we're hearing that companies would like to have more ingrained in their leaders. In the bachelor's and master's level supply chain engineering programs, what we're hearing is more focus on analytics and actually renewed focus and growth in mechatronics and robotics. Courses that over the years had been pushed aside, people want now back into the curriculum coupled with the analytics. And then experiential learning and team-based learning. So we're adding more and more class projects in addition to the required semester-long capstone projects. And then at the workforce level, entry-level positions, what we're hearing is companies want people with a good customer service focus. People that can work with external customers, come across well, understand the importance of customers to the overall corporation, but then also internally, play nicely amongst the departments and understand how your role, whatever it may be, impacts people downstream and upstream in the supply chain and the company's performance. So we keep hearing customer service and the ability to think outside the lines when needed. There's lots of policies and procedures and standard operating procedures that entry-level employees need to follow, but that doesn't address all needs. When something goes haywire, they want somebody who can jump on a spreadsheet and do some basic numbers and come up with a solution rather than standing around waiting for someone to solve a simple issue for them. So I think those are some of the key themes that we're hearing.
Great.
I want to add on to your customer comment. I want to hire people who are obsessed with customers. And they have to be in this day and age. It's just precious that they do that. You want to hire, there's a great saying out there, wars are won with patriots, not mercenaries. So when you hire people, make sure you're bringing them in as owners. I don't care if they're driving a forklift or you're paying them to manage a facility. They have to be owners in the process. And you do that by developing a connected culture. And millennials, there's a lot of talk about them, but people graduating college now or going directly in the workforce right from high school, they all share a common trait. They have to understand their role in the big picture. You have to give them varied tasks. You just can't tell them, hey, this is your job and that's all you're ever going to do. You have to give them interesting projects on the side. They'll even do them on the side. A lot of our innovation projects at Caterpillar are done by people outside of their normal job. They'll do 100% of their job and then they'll come help us out with a lot of these innovation projects. So you got to tap into those passions of your entire workforce, connect them to the big picture in a way so they know what they do is meaningful. And I think, you know, and again, hire very, very, just be very ruthless about how you hire people. It's got to be that way. Be choosy. Bring in the people that make you feel dumb. You know, you've got to do those things, and you're going to build a successful organization.
So what you're saying, Todd, is don't set up your customer care or customer support operations in India then. Well,
if your customers might be in India, that might be the place to go. Just depends.
If they're in India,
yeah.
right?
But if the people you hire are obsessed with your customers, no matter where they are or who they are,
Right.
That's a good hire.
But they got to know your operations. They got to know what's going on to be able to answer the questions and the issues that the customer is bringing.
Yeah, exactly.
Real members of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jay, how should workforce challenges be addressed?
Technology can be, you know, one of the enablers. Excuse me. Technology can be opportunistically deployed to bridge that gap in the supply chain environment where automation and robotics and a lot of there's just a tremendous amount of automation that may feel like the human element is actually getting kind of designed out of it. All that means at the end of the day is that the role of the human workforce actually may evolve from becoming doers or doers of the principal tasks to managers of the different infrastructure that's out there. And again, it comes down to how do you apply technology in a way that actually creates an effective human interface to a lot of the different kinds of infrastructure investments that are going on, and kind of cut down and reduce that knowledge gap on systems and infrastructure that is getting increasingly intelligent, and the human being who's also capable of lots and lots of different intelligent thought, and being able to use technology to bridge that gap.
Great. Okay, gentlemen, I'm getting the 2-minute warning, so let's have one last question here. I'd like anybody to comment on it if they'd like. Maybe Randy, you could start it off. But so, what should leaders be doing regarding the workforce challenge, in your opinion?
Well, one of the first things that leaders should be doing is become comfortable with reality, and the reality is supply chain professionals of tomorrow are not looking for a job. They don't want a job. They want an experience, and they want challenging missions. So ask yourself, can you create that type of environment for them? The second thing is engage or initiate industry and academic partnerships, whether it's getting on board, becoming part of academic advisory boards, helping to shape the curriculum, being able to interface with students and work more closely with students other than during the time of recruitment. And then the third thing I would say is create purple people. Think in terms of this. You need people who are blue, who have strong business acumen, but you also need those same individuals to have solid technical skill sets and backgrounds. And so and those are your red people, or the red skill set. So if you take the blue and the red and put it together, you have purple people. And right now what we're doing is we're hedging because we can't find purple people. We'll just hire blue and red and we'll make them work on teams. But the future is to try to embed that into one person. And then last but not least, you have to diversify your workforce. And you need to be deliberate with respect to diversifying the workforce. If in fact creativity and innovation are passions for your organization, then realize that diversity with respect to a workforce is the incubator for innovation and creativity.
Absolutely.
You know, the thing, George, that I see in that as leaders is that we need to take action. We need to move fast, and we need to break things. And in a philosophy that I've developed over the years, it's easier to get forgiveness than it is permission. And a lot of times we're hesitant to do things because we're waiting on somebody else to do it. If we think it's right for our company and we think it's right for the employees, let's take action and start making things happen. It's not always going to be perfect, but you'll get synergism that'll drive you to where you need to be.
Thanks, Greg. So, great lead in terms of, what should companies do to make it happen? I see 4 steps. The first one is to take a vest, test, and learn approach to gaining familiarity and with these new technologies while building a framework within your companies. What we're seeing the most progressive companies doing today, they're doing this invest, test, learn very quickly, very rapidly, and learning on some of these technologies and leveraging that learning. They're not taking a 3-year roadmap just to do one technology. It's very rapid type of implementation approach. The second thing where we're seeing the most progressive companies do is really look at this holistically, look at the end-to-end supply chain, not only within their company, but their customers and their suppliers. I'm not sure how many people are in the healthcare industry, but there's some, in that industry, there's some hospitals or providers that are leveraging kind of RFID technologies and sensors in some of their bins to get on-demand signals in terms of when a product is being used, and then working with their distributors and their manufacturers to try to streamline, reduce inventory, reduce excess obsolete inventory throughout the entire supply chain. So they're leveraging their entire end-to-end supply chain using these technologies to drive improvements for everybody, not just their company. The third step is really look at these technologies and see, is there one where you could leverage to leapfrog your competition? And the fourth step, and I think we talked a lot about this on the panel, is the workforce. Not only investing in hiring and training strategies, but I think the most critical component is retention. How do you retain these critical resources? I want to thank you for your time today, and I'll pass it back to George.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Click it for me. Okay, now we've got a few minutes for questions and answers. If anybody would like to ask a question, we've got a panel here that has some great answers, I'm sure. Okay, we've got somebody over here. We've got a mic for you, I'm sorry, so we can hear you. He's coming around.
One of the comments was about leaders needing to accept reality and implementing innovations rapidly. With the business culture of quarter-to-quarter earnings reports and how the market will rapidly react to below expectation results, how do you motivate business leaders to make these investments and jumps in technology when it might pose a risk towards their company's total value on the market?
That hits us at Caterpillar, right in the heart. We are a very conservative, old company. We have a very strong product line. We protect our brand like you can't believe. And all those things can lead to maybe not having as much innovation or taking risks. However, our C-suite people, our CEO, has declared that we don't want to be Kodak. And we've put the scare of being Kodak as a team, we're on the innovation team, we've put the scare of being Kodak in every presentation we make. When we have some crazy idea we think we want to implement, we make it, if it does look like a Kodak moment, we want to bring that out and say, if we don't take advantage of this, other people will. And they're going to beat us to it, and they're going to disrupt our business if we don't. So we've got a very top-down approach to it, but then we're also taking and making innovation not be strange to people. So we've got this process called Kickbox we've adopted from Adobe. And we just are out there handing people a $1,000 pro card. You go to a class, you go out there, and we want to see some reasonable result. But for the first time ever, we're handing people $1,000 to go do something with and has no accounting oversight. So we're trying to do it from the bottom level up too. And we've got permission, obviously, from our corporate offices to do that. But they are being very supportive. And that's kind of where it starts. But you can do these things on the individual level too. You can be an innovator and actually still exist in these companies. Just get your regular job done first.
Right. That's a great question, and that is the challenge. One of the things that Peter Diamandis talked about on Monday is the Fortune 500 in 1924, I think was, the average lifespan of a company on the Fortune 500 was 67 years. Today it's 15 years. And so and that just tells you right there that, and it's only, as we've talked about all week, the innovation is exponential. It's not stopping. It's going to keep going. So think 10 times, not 10%. Yes? Right here, he's coming.
Hi, this is for anyone on the panel. You talked about technology, automation in the warehouse, freeing up individuals to do more value-added jobs that will lead to higher pay. I'm wondering, in a warehouse environment, what qualifies as a value-added, higher-paying job that a robot or some form of automation couldn't do instead of a human?
I'll take first shot at that. I think we have to change the way we look at it. In other words, I wouldn't confine it to just the warehouse. What you have to ask yourself is this: what are the processes, the activities, or the tasks that we perform that are routine, rarely go awry, and rarely require human intervention? And if you have humans doing that, then you're wasting talent. And if you're wasting talent, you're wasting money. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's earth-shattering as much as it is move them to another part of the organization if necessary. They don't have to stay in the warehouse. There may be other tasks that need to be performed in other parts of the business that you don't have the personnel to do. And so it gives you an opportunity to cross-train and redeploy the same talents that you already hired rather than having to go out and invest in new talent. So that's one way of looking at it. And I'll leave it to someone else on the panel to fill in.
Let me play on that a little bit in the warehouse situation. You know, as we begin to make data more transparent and we have more information in front of us, we're going to need people to deal with the business analytics that's going on in the warehouses, the wave picking, and where is it all going to go, and these kind of things. And so I think it's going to take a different skill level to be able to deal with the business analytics to run those warehouses and operate from a faster demand schedule that's going to be coming. And your robot will do the mundane, the simple things that's repetitive over and over, but right now they can't read the business analytics. They can be programmed, but they can't read the day-to-day activity that's changing on the fly.
Right. The other thing I would add to that is that robot just doesn't appear.
That's right.
The robot has to be designed, the robot has to be built, the robot has to be programmed, the robot has to be maintained. So the jobs change too as well.
And the other thing I would say is that kind of the way you look at warehouses, distribution centers today, I think it's going to really evolve and change in the future, right? As kind of, you know, on-demand type of kind of fulfillment and delivery that people are requiring now, and I think that's going to change the whole landscape of how we look at distribution, so which will open up new opportunities for people.
Any other questions? Okay, on behalf of MHI, we'd like to thank you for being a part of this important conversation that will no doubt advance our industry. I'd really like to give a round of applause to our panel. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.